but as a woman ready to embrace life's endless possibilities. The clock struck 11:30 p.m. on New Year's Eve. I sat alone in my dimly lit room, the faint hum of distant fireworks echoing through the silence. My plan was simple, to welcome the new year quietly, away from the chaos. But something about the night felt off. The air was unnaturally cold, and the shadows in my room seemed to stretch further than they should. Each creak of the house amplified the uneasy silence, making me question if I was truly alone. A strange loneliness gnawed at me, growing heavier with every passing second, as though I were the only soul left in the world. The festive sounds outside felt like they belonged to another universe, far removed from the chilling void of my room. By 11:35 p.m., I noticed a strange scratching sound coming from the corner of the room. My heart raced, the rhythmic sound growing in intensity. At first, I dismissed it as the old wooden floorboards creaking, but then it grew louder, deliberate, almost as if someone, or something, was trying to get my attention. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, but the noise was persistent, refusing to be ignored. My breath quickened as I scanned the room. The faint light of my desk lamp flickered erratically, casting unsettling shadows that danced across the walls. The unease that had been simmering now boiled over, a suffocating wave of dread tightening its grip on me. At 11:40 p.m., my phone buzzed. I jumped, the sudden vibration cutting through the oppressive silence like a knife. A text message appeared on the screen from an unknown number. "Don't look behind you." My breath caught in my throat, my hands trembling as I clutched the phone. Every instinct screamed at me to ignore the message, but curiosity, or perhaps fear, compelled me to turn. Slowly, I twisted my head, the anticipation gnawing at my sanity. Nothing was there, yet the room felt heavier, like an unseen presence was watching me from the shadows. My skin prickled with goosebumps, a pang of regret filling my chest. Why had I stayed home alone tonight? The festive cheer of others seemed like a distant memory, replaced by an encroaching terror. By 11:45 p.m., the lights in my room dimmed on their own. A sharp metallic scent filled the air, making me gag. It was the unmistakable smell of blood. My stomach churned as I stumbled toward the light switch, flicking it repeatedly, but the darkness refused to relent. I grabbed my phone to call for help, but the screen went black. Panic set in, each breath growing shallower. That's when I saw it, a shadowy figure in the mirror across the room. My heart plummeted as I realized it wasn't my reflection. The figure moved independently, its hollow, lifeless eyes locked onto mine. My hands trembled as I stumbled back, knocking over a chair. Memories of every bad decision I had ever made flashed through my mind, as though the figure was pulling them to the surface, feeding on my guilt and fear. At 11:50 p.m., the scratching sound returned, but this time it came from inside the walls. It grew louder, more frantic, as if something was desperately trying to claw its way out. My instincts screamed for me to run, but my legs felt like lead, rooted to the spot. Desperate for answers, I approached the mirror. Its surface seemed to shimmer, rippling like water. As I reached out, a cold, skeletal hand shot out from the glass and grabbed my wrist. I screamed, the icy touch searing into my skin like fire. The figure's voice was low and guttural. "You're not supposed to be here." My legs buckled, my vision blurring as if the very air around me was being drained of life. A chilling realization dawned. This wasn't just a nightmare. It was real. At 11:55 p.m., I realized the figure was mimicking my every move, but in reverse. When I raised my hand, it lowered its own. When I took a step back, it stepped forward. A chilling thought struck me. It wanted to switch places. Frantically, I searched for anything to shatter the mirror, but every object I touched seemed to vanish in my hands, dissolving into nothingness. Tears welled in my eyes as a crushing sense of helplessness consumed me. The figure's grin widened, revealing jagged, inhuman teeth that gleamed in the dim light. It was no longer just a reflection. It was something far worse. At 11:58 p.m., the room began to spin. The walls warped and twisted, the very fabric of reality unraveling around me. The mirror's surface rippled violently, as though it were alive. I heard whispers all around me, each voice more sinister than the last. They chanted in unison, "One must stay for the curse to break." My heart pounded in my chest as the figure stepped closer, its movements predatory, deliberate. My mind screamed for escape, but my body was paralyzed, as if bound by invisible chains. At 11:59 p.m., the clock began to chime. Each strike sent a jolt of pain through my body, reverberating deep into my soul. The mirror figure lunged forward, pulling me closer with unnatural strength. I fought back, my screams swallowed by the growing darkness. Just as the final chime echoed, the figure whispered in a voice dripping with malice, "Happy New Year." When I opened my eyes, I was no longer in my room. I was inside the mirror, staring out at my own reflection. The figure, now in my body, smiled and turned away, leaving me trapped. The fireworks outside roared in celebration, but for me, the new year had just become an eternal nightmare. I banged on the glass, screaming for help, but my voice was drowned by the sounds of laughter and joy. My pleas echoed back to me, a cruel reminder of my fate. As the minutes stretched into hours, a painful realization gripped me. My arrogance, my dismissal of the strange omens, had led me here. Perhaps this was my punishment, an eternal reflection of every wrong choice I had made. The figure, now living my life, seemed to relish its newfound freedom, leaving me to endure this torment. Somewhere, deep within the silence, I heard a whisper, "Will you change if given another chance?" The room's silence returned, broken only by the faint scratching from inside the glass. The night was oppressive, the kind that suffocates even the bravest of hearts. Eleanor stood before the looming Victorian mansion, its silhouette jagged against a sky heavy with storm clouds. In her trembling hands, she clutched a diary, its leather worn and etched with gold lettering. Bram Stoker. She had discovered it among her late uncle's belongings, tucked away in a trunk labeled, "For the Brave." The mansion had always been a place of whispers, of secrets murmured through its decaying walls. Her uncle had warned her never to tamper with the grandfather clock that dominated the parlor. "It counts more than hours," he had once said, his voice trembling with an emotion she had mistaken for nostalgia. Tonight, curiosity overcame caution. It was New Year's Eve, and Eleanor intended to unravel the mystery. The parlor greeted her with its eerie silence. Shadows danced across the walls, cast by the flickering flames of the fireplace. The clock stood at the room's center, its towering presence both regal and menacing. Its brass pendulum swung in perfect rhythm, the carvings on its surface grotesque, serpents consuming themselves, clock hands twisted into unnatural shapes. As the clock struck 11:15 p.m., the room shuddered. The air thickened, carrying the faint scent of decay. Eleanor's gaze fell on the diary, now resting on the mantel. Its pages began to turn of their own accord, settling on a passage written in trembling script. "Do not let it chime 12. The 12th toll will bind you to its will." Eleanor laughed nervously, dismissing the warning as a Victorian melodrama. She approached the clock and lightly touched its face. Instantly, the pendulum stopped, and the room plunged into darkness. When the lights returned, Eleanor found herself in a different version of the parlor. It was no longer decayed but pristine, the wallpaper vibrant, the furniture gleaming. Laughter echoed down the halls, though she was certain she was alone. The clock now read 11:30 p.m., and its chimes were soft, almost melodic. Eleanor approached the mirror above the fireplace and gasped. Her reflection wore a gown from another era, her hair styled in cascading curls. Behind her, A crowd of masked figures danced, their faces obscured but their movements hypnotic. One figure stepped forward, its mask grotesquely elongated, and whispered, "Time unravels for those who dare." Eleanor turned, but the room was empty. The clock struck 11:45 p.m., and the world around her began to fragment. She was no longer in the parlor, but on a cobblestone street bathed in moonlight. Around her, revelers in masks celebrated, their laughter disjointed and echoing unnaturally. The diary appeared in her hands, its pages filled with frantic scrawls. The chime rewinds your soul. Beware the faces of those who linger. One reveler approached her, its mask cracked to reveal hollow eyes. "You've stolen our time," it hissed. Eleanor stumbled back, but the crowd closed in, their movements stiff and puppet-like. As the clock chimed again, Eleanor was pulled back into the parlor, gasping for air. Her heart raced as she realized the clock wasn't just marking time, it was erasing it. At 11:55 p.m., the clock's rhythm became erratic, its pendulum swinging violently. Eleanor noticed a keyhole at its base, faintly glowing. The diary trembled in her hands, revealing a final passage. Only the key can halt the cycle. But the cost is steep: your past, your future, or your soul. A brass key materialized in her palm, heavy and warm. As she inserted it into the clock, visions assaulted her, her childhood, her loved ones, her darkest secrets. Each memory felt like it was being stripped away, leaving her hollow. The 12th chime began, and Eleanor turned the key with all her strength. The clock groaned, its glass face shattering as shadows poured out, screaming and writhing. When the silence returned, Eleanor found herself back in the present. The clock lay in ruins, its brass hands melted and its pendulum still. She felt an overwhelming sense of relief until she glanced at the mirror. Her reflection stared back, but it wasn't hers. It was the mask of one of the revelers, hollow-eyed and grinning. The diary's final words burned into her mind. The curse does not end. It only waits. Another year, another soul. As the first fireworks of the new year exploded outside, Eleanor realized the chime had not been silenced. It had simply passed to her.
If you enjoyed this terrifying tale, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a chilling story. Your support helps us create even more thrilling content, and we're so grateful to have you with us on this terrifying journey. Thanks for watching, and remember, once you subscribe, the nightmare never ends.